Switzerland is struggling right now with the currencies change and with some conjuncture problems. But we will manage it. We will manage, and how? I mean, tourism can play a very important role. How ironic can be history that back after the Second World War, tourism was already on the table as a giant for the economy, and we're back there. We are back there. In 1948, there was a very famous author. You may know him for the Little Prince, Antoine de Saint-Exupéry, who wrote another famous book, not just as famous as The Little Prince, The Wisdom of Sand, with a very nice quote, and I would like you to remember this quote these days, which says, "Your task is not to foresee the future, but to enable it." And we're here, all of us, to share, to contribute, and to shape the future through technology, probably, and through all new ideas, new input that we all should throw to the table and share. With that words, it is my big pleasure and honor to introduce our distinguished keynote speakers today, who will enlighten us with tremendous hot topics today. I would like to invite Dr. McGuire to the table, please, and Mr. Victor Schlegel, please. I would like to introduce Mr. Victor Schlegel. He began his career in Japan at Fujisan Corporation as a global marketing department. After further position at the T-System and Credit Suisse, where he worked as black belt in efficient projects, he took the position as big data project leader at Swisscom Switzerland AG. Accents, right? And the title of his intervention today is "The Mobile Revolution in Tourism. What are and will be the factors of success?" Mr. Schlegel, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much for the introduction. My name is Victor Schlegel, and I'm leading a department for Big Data and Business Intelligence Services at Swisscom. Swisscom is one of the largest communication and IT providers in Switzerland. And in that department, we are placing or trying to place new informational services on the market, trying to place new services outside of communication and IT. And today I would like to present some use cases which are actually based on the new technology called Big Data. Probably you are tired of hearing the word Big Data. Is that the case? Could you put your hands up who is tired of that word? Okay, just who is not who is not familiar with the term Big Data? Could you put your hands up? Okay. So I will not spend much time on the technology. I would like to present rather the use cases which that technology allowed us to place new services in the tourism and also different further sectors in Switzerland. We are not an expert in tourism, so I will not speak about the success factors teaching you. I'm rather here in order to get or hope to get your input on the topics that I will be presenting today. So what we're actually doing in Swisscom, we are trying to build a platform where we try to depict any dimension of mobility in the country. What does it mean? Basically, since we are the telecommunication provider, we are able to track our customers on the basis of mobile phone data. Of course, we do it in a specific way. We do not sell that data. We do it in an anonymized way. And on the basis of that information, you could imagine that we are counting the number of passengers in the trains. It would be possible, since we know where the people are, that you would like try to count the number of passengers in any transportation mean. You would be able to calculate the source destination matrix, from where to where do people go. You would be able to calculate the growth rates in a specific city, etc. Before I start with the use cases, I would like to explain very shortly the term of big data and business intelligence. Just one slide for the people who are not familiar with the term. So what is actually big data? From our perspective, big data is a subject of business intelligence. And under the business intelligence, we understand a process which transforms data to information, decision, and knowledge. Basically, that process is depicted with the blue area, and it contains several functions like data integration, data storage, reporting, monitoring, analytics, forecast, and prevention. The more you go up in those functions, the more complex those functions become, but the more valuable is the information that those functions provide for the business or questions of the business on the right side. Do we have the information? Where is the information? What happened? What is happening right now? Why something happened? When will something happen? And what do we do in order that something happens or do not happen? In that context, big data is just data, normal data, with large scales in regards to velocity, variety, and volume, which cannot be processed with classical technologies. So all databases are not able to store all the data that we are able to generate today. We are not able to process it with the needed pace or in the needed variety. What is possible with the technology for the telecommunication company? What is the value of it? Basically, the value of business intelligence is that you are able to filter relevant information out of a big data explosion with business intelligence function and ingest it into the business processes that allow you to basically get better marketing position, better understanding of the processes. You are able to get cheaper processes, enable your knowledge workers to do their job better, etc. The value of business intelligence is Gartner did a survey in that area, showed that the companies which are mature in that business intelligence process are able to perform over the average on the market. Doesn't matter in what sector are you working in. What is the value of the big data? With big data today, you are able to analyze more complex systems. You do not have to do sampling. You do not have to simplify a research subject into a model. You can just grasp the whole system in its totality with the data that is available out of that system and basically analyze the complete complexity and relationship within that system. I'm sorry, I forgot to tell you, please ask your questions straight away during my presentation. I don't want to keep a monologue from my side. I would be rather interested about your questions and basically start a conversation straight away. Just don't hesitate. So business intelligence and big data can help you to understand classical challenges better and cheaper. So basically understanding of trends. What is the marketing impact that you start in Switzerland, in China? The speed. You are able to act with higher speeds. Basically, as an example, you are able to understand what is the impact of a train outage on visitors in a specific connection between two cities. You are able to better understand the complexity. Basically, as an example, already mentioned, impact of Swiss currency exchange rates. You are able to place better cost efficiency in your business. As an example, you got new digital assistants based on IBM Watson, where intelligent machine is answering you your best traveling destinations. And you are able to design new business models, like, as an example, the telco, like Swisscom, is being active in the area of tourism. The whole story is also about the privacy and data protection as a very major factor. Because of the big data, the technology is bringing as much value as well as much danger. It's like a fire in the hands of a human that can bring good, but then also destroy. Therefore, you have to pay attention to the customer privacy and data protection first, then think of business. With big data, a new learning curve is started for all stakeholders on the market, like intelligence agencies, state departments, lawyers, citizens, and enterprises. But on the other hand, please also think what TV technology generated several years ago. What hype was generated when TV was introduced and people were also talking about Big Brother. There's no solution available today for the data privacy. From our perspective, time and experience is needed in order to address a solution here. Therefore, we suggest to do the experiments with big data and privacy to fail as fast as possible and cheap in order to learn and get faster to the success. So what we do? I would like to start with the use cases. Basically, with the mobile data, as I already mentioned, you are able to place faster, more detailed and frequent information on tourist visitor in a specific region based on mobile data. I would like to show you some visualizations. We have performed a research together with Professor Miriam Scaglione from the University of Valley, and basically calculated the points of interest and frequencies of visitors in specific areas in Switzerland based on mobile phones. And 1 second, I have to restart that. On that visualization, you see basically the points of interest divided by nation. The colors means different nations, and the time sequence shows basically during the day higher number of density in a specific area where tourists find a point of interest and basically look at it. That information was calculated on the cells that we provided to the Research Institute, and basically today you would be able to understand what nation exactly is coming to a specific tourism destination and what the people look at what specific point of time during the stay at the destination. You are also able to depict the traces, so basically it's not just the calculation of points of interest, but basically also the trajectories of people, how they move in a specific destination. And on that visualization you see that example. That was done in the area of Bali in Switzerland. Fribourg was once before, no? Okay. Sorry, Fribourg. How basically we do that? I would like to show you the basis of the technology. On that visualization, you see the city of Zurich during the night, and you see the pedestrians, car drivers, as well as the customers going by bus, train, or tram in a specific city. We are going in the morning hours. It's now 6 o'clock in the morning. More people are coming to the city. Basically, the graphic is being overwhelmed by all the people coming to the city. It's now 8 o'clock in the morning. You don't have an overview, but you can apply different filters and basically filter out all the pedestrians and car drivers as I'm seeing now. And basically you see now the movements of trains and buses in the city. Now zoomed in and you see typical frequencies, basically train and buses serving specific spots in the city at the bottom right corner, then back to the middle of the graph, and then up as well as the left upper corner being served by a specific train. We do not sell that information. Basically, it's an example of a technology to explain how we work. What we do sell is those information that we calculate out of this data, like the points of interest and number of visitors at a specific area, specific time, and you are basically able to optimize the infrastructure in that area. Like here, you see the heat map of visitors in the city of Zurich around the train station of Zurich, where you see a specific circle and the distribution of visitors during the time, and you see the peaks of people in the morning and evening hours. If you add the CRM data that enterprises store in the databases, then you can basically analyze that heat map also along the dimensions like gender, age, and rough income of people in that heat map.
You asked me to break the ice or something to say, right?
Yeah, sure, anytime.
Victor, this is very impressive data, but the question here, what are you going to do with this data? And we have the problem of having a huge aggregate collective data versus what is important for businesses, which is individual data. And then we crash with the regulation. And you have countries like United States, which is, they have a lack of regulation there and they're very liberal. And then you have the European Union or Switzerland itself, where you have over-regulation. So how is Swisscom dealing with this? Because you want to serve your client better, understand what their needs are, and you have now more or less a collective pattern. So how are you going to tackle this?
Is that the question in regards to the regulation or the value for tourism business? Both. Okay. So basically, with that kind of information, you are able to optimize the, as an example, opening hours of info points. Are the info points at the correct place? Are the opening hours at the correct place? Do the co-workers at the info points have correct languages? Are the names of the streets or points of interest being placed in the specific language and tailored to the customers, as an example, from Russia or China? You are able basically to track the effectiveness of your marketing measures in the abroad. So basically, if a tourism destination starts an advertisement in Vietnam, you are able to track the increasing or decreasing numbers of visitors coming from Vietnam based on mobile data. You are able to analyze the impact of exchange rates, as already said, basically comparing the number of visitors in a country based on mobile data. Do we have more visitors in January 2015 compared to January 2014, as an example? I don't know if that is of interest in the tourism area or not. We are basically starting there, so I'm not, as I already said, we are not an expert there, but this is where I would like to get the input. In regards to the data privacy, Switzerland is one of the countries with strongest regulation of the data privacy, so we had our restrictions there as well. All information that I have presented is basically not breaking the data privacy because the data is anonymized. You are not able to track the individuals out of the information that we have calculated. Also, I have to mention here that there's no absolute privacy in that world. If someone has enough money and time, he will get any information that is available today in that world. Therefore, we are talking about the probabilities. And we have been talking to our security office as well as data protection office of our company, but then also government, where we have presented the anonymization methods, and basically that was marked as best practice. We of course oriented ourselves on the white papers presented by the British government as well as the marketing research companies in the United States. This is the best input you could get today on the anonymization methods, and that is basically the base of our work. Because we say that if you are acting in a not sustainable way, you are not able to place a solid business in long term. Did I answer your question?
I would say in German, yeah. No, of course it does, but it gives probably the chance, to the audience to think about it and maybe have some more questions regarding the effect. This is the issue which is on the table, it's in the media. What is going to happen with all this data? How are they going to use it? Is this something which is going to be a risk for me as a user, as a consumer, as an individual, or it's something that's going to be used for the human, for the good of humankind?
You will not be earning money if you will act just for the good of humankind. The companies are here to earn the money. Otherwise, you are not able to place the working places. On the other hand, of course, you have to be cautious about the data protection because the new technologies being placed in that world is undermining actually also democracy. You see the examples in Europe and the United States. And therefore, I'm saying, as I already said, we rather take the approach to get to proceed on the market and learn faster, maybe fail faster, and learn that way. Otherwise, you are not being able to be competitive on the market. You have to gather that knowledge in a way, and probably that is the best practice that we took. And it's our opinion. If you wait on the market, you are basically being late. I would like to continue and also explain maybe on the examples how do we do the anonymization. Basically, you see an example in the area of transportation, which is also relevant to tourism. Think of transportation ways being interrupted, and you have to basically bring the people to the point of destination that they are targeting at the beginning of their journey. You see here a project with the Ministry of Roads, where we have been calculating the average speeds and traveling times in real time for the whole Swiss highway network. And we are basically placing every 500 meters a virtual sensor where you are able to get the information about the traveling time and traveling speeds. As depicted here, you see the dots. If the mouse goes over the specific dot, you see the actual speed right now on the highway. The red dots are marking the speeds which are below 35 km per hour, and the green ones, as you see, around 120 km per hour. Here, basically, we are checking also the ones who are driving too fast and correct that speeds down to the green area so that the police is not able to optimize the places of the speed radars. We are also looking at the speeds around 35 km/h and below. Basically, we are able to track people in the wheelchair, and as soon as you are able to track a specific pattern of a person driving with that speed in a specific area, and you know that it's probably a wheelchair driver, then you have de-anonymized that person. And therefore, we are also filtering that kind of information out of our services and preserve in that way the privacy of our customers. So for each specific case, we are basically checking if there are any outliers which give information, let's say about less than 3 people, and that way we basically filter that information. For example, for the project in the area of tourism on the frequencies of visitor in Fribourg, we basically did not display any information if we had that number of people below 5. And that was considered as enough in order to preserve the privacy. You see here another analysis in the area of tourism where you are able to analyze the dwell time and visitor flows for the tourism industry and basically depict different nations, what they have looked at in the country. And you see here that Germans are basically being active in the northern part of Switzerland, the French ones rather on the left, and so on. Crowd management during events. We are basically trying to serve also the event organizers, placing a service there where we calculate the density of people in a specific spot and tell the organizers when the number of people is basically exceeding 3 people per square meter, that you have to redirect people out of that area in order to reduce the risk of over-trampling. So you have heard the cases where people were in panic running around, and basically death cases as well as soon as the panic breaks out during the events. So that is kind of a service which we have placed, trying to place on the market. We had, of course, also discussions with the police. They wanted to monitor those events, like you can imagine the 1st of May, where we said that is basically not possible because we are not able to guarantee the anonymization, as well as the Swisscom is not the company there on the market to trace the vandalism, and therefore we declined that kind of service for the police department. You have seen that visualization. There's another analytics on the shopping mall visitors, where you are able to analyze according to the dwell time of the persons who is basically the shopper, who is the visitor trying to get to the space to get the information, or just to pass through the shopping mall. And that is basically also of the value if you would like to understand for what purpose do people come to a specific area. Transportation mode analytics, basically you have seen that visualization. What we also try is, as you saw, to differentiate between the transportation modes with what transport means do people come to a specific spot? Is it the train, is it the bus, is it the bike, or do they come by foot? Origin destination matrix analytics for the transportation industry, where you see the areas in blue, from where do people come 3 hours before a specific train connection, and where do they go after they have taken the train from Zurich to Bern 3 hours after they have left a specific train connection. These are the areas marked with the red color. I would like also to go further into the further functions that would be basically be possible if you would work with interdisciplinary players on the market, like weather analytics and so on. So basically, you could imagine that you would get over the smartphone as an interface to the customer the availability of lodging and parking plots at the moment and the forecast for that with the big data technologies. Just imagine what would be the impact of that function on the market. What would be the customer experience if you would be able to dynamically reserve a specific parking plot for the customer which is driving by car to the tourism destination and then not being able to arrive on time but still keep the parking lot reservation for him. You would imagine what would happen if you would be able to reserve a table at the tourism destination or a picnic area on your smartphone and basically get your food with a specific number. You do not have to wait for your food in the waiting line and get the food with the specific number that is being displayed on your mobile phone. Imagine what could happen if you would display the waiting time at the ski lifts for the tourist who is being in the hotel and basically who is getting up out of his bed and sees what is the waiting times at specific spots, and then let him decide what area in the ski resort he would like to take based on that kind of information. Imagine what would happen if you would get real-time comparison on cost time on the journeys with the car or public transportation, and so on. I would like to finish my presentation at that point, and if there's any questions, I would be glad to answer that. Otherwise, I would pass the presentation to the next point.
Thank you very much, Victor. We have enough time for questions, so please don't be shy. Use the occasion. I think we had a lady here. Oh, you want to please.
Yeah, Victor, thank you. Fascinating, and I have to back up a minute. I'm not quite sure what data you're getting on the traffic data with the cars. You've got sensors every 500 meters. That's easy. But on the mobile data, does my phone have to be turned on? Are you reading my texts? I mean, what kind of data are you getting and how are you getting it?
Okay. Okay, so we are basically not reading the information out of your smartphone. What we are using is the technical data when you are changing a specific cell in where we are serving the customers. We are using exactly that data. As soon as you change a specific cell, your mobile phone is sending the technical information where we are able to calculate your position.
And what's a cell?
Antenna. It's like
It's an antenna. A cell is an area being served by a specific antenna where you are able to make a call. If the cell is not there, we are not able to send a radio wave and basically not serve you your mobile phone.
And my phone must be turned on.
This is correct.
So all of this mobile data is people with a mobile phone turned on.
This is correct.
We had a second question here.
Yes, I was wondering how accessible this information will be to everybody. Will it just be for those businesses who can afford it and will buy it for an amount of price, or will you be offering it also to smaller business depending on what their needs are?
As I mentioned at the beginning, it's basically a platform. You can imagine it as a portal where any kind of business is able to log in and buy that kind of information on real-time basis, including forecasts, historical analytics, or real-time data. We are also trying to place, it's also in regards to the sustainability of the business. We have to consider our end customers, because the information and the whole service for business is basically based on the data which is being generated by end customers. And a lot of people think that this data belongs to them, which is not quite correct. But it's not important. The most important is what is the perception of the customers. And basically, because most of the people think that the data belongs to them, we are trying to place service for free for the end customer, where we design the information in a different way than for the business. And let's say provide the information to the end customers. As an example, where do I have to go? Where can I see wildlife within 2 hours around the city of Zurich with my children? As an example. Do I have to go today by car or by bus? And so on. So we are taking the steps in that regard. What we are also trying to place is an engine where the end customers are able to choose for what use cases they allow the data collection and in what detailed level should that happen. Because we think that not a company as well as not a state should decide what data the end customers would like to give, but the end customer by yourself.
We have another question here.
Thanks for the excellent presentation. And I understood that you take the data from your mobile phones. How can you distinguish between the different transport modes? For example, bus and private car. The other things I understand, but bus and private car, you need a model. What is the estimate and what is the error rate?
Okay. So basically, the distinction happens on the movement patterns, and typically the public transportation takes regular patterns. The bus is basically going the same bus stops, the same direction, and then you are able to filter out that kind of mobile phones or SIM cards being placed in a bus or a train. And the second method is basically calculating the clusters. In a bus, you have a movement of a cluster like of 10 to 20 people, and in a car, just 1 to 2 persons. And that way you're able to differentiate between a car and the bus. And in the train, you have typically more than 10 to 20 mobile phones inside. And also a different speed as well compared to the car and the bus, so you are able to calculate the train. And then, in order to differentiate between the private and commercial movements, you are basically also have to apply different algorithms. The private and commercial movements have their patterns. The private ones are basically moving maybe twice, maybe 3 times a day, going to work, going home, shopping, and maybe one more place to to the friseur. And the commercials are basically having much more stop and goes because they have to put the load on the transportation in order to refinance the costs and investments in the transportation. If you buy a truck, you would like that this truck is being used permanently. So this truck will have a lot of traveling time during the day and night.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Really interesting. Just to make it clear what Jamie asked, that means that the cell phone has to be on, you just track it via the cells, and no Wi-Fi, no Bluetooth, you cannot track that?
We can track that as well, but for that you need a different technology. We are also providing the Wi-Fi infrastructure in the country, but all the services that you saw today is basically based on mobile connections because it has a bigger sampling size compared to Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. People usually do not switch Bluetooth and Wi-Fi because it drains your the battery power. And if you use the mobile data out of the cells, it's basically you're not touching the mobile phone at all. So no battery is used, and that kind. And we are basically using the complete sample of our customers. It's like 65% of the market share of ours. So you have like 65% of sampling for the whole population. Yes, please.
Yeah, very interesting presentation, but let's clarify this point. I imagine that the data that you are collecting are coming only from your customers, so you cannot track the customers that are for, let's say, for other operators, but I know there are interoperability of, say, infrastructures that enable to operate also different operators. So what kind of data from the other operators can you monitor and can you collect? Or if there are some agreements between operators to share data to have, let's say, general picture of the moments of all the users of mobile networks.
So there is basically a technology where you are able also to trace the customers also of our competitors, but it's not allowed to deploy that technology. That technology is being deployed basically by police. And it's prohibited to use it for commercial purposes. It's very strictly regulated. Technology is there, but we are not deploying it. So basically what we do is we adjust the 65% of the sample to the whole population. And depending on the use case, if you would like to get the information where do elderly people go, you have also to readjust that because we have a shift between the young and elderly customers, and therefore you have to basically readjust your algorithm depending on the use case.
So we have 1 more minute for last question, please. There's a gentleman over there. Very quick, maybe we manage to have all.
Thank you. I have a very quick question. It's a very interesting topic. Is there a possibility for an individual to choose not to provide you the information that you are getting?
I'm sorry, the last sentence. Is there a possibility not to be part of the service? Is that the
Yes.
question? Okay.
Yeah.
So basically, according to the law of Switzerland, because we anonymize that data, basically we do the anonymization on the fly. And on the fly, there's basically no anonymized, no personal information. It's numbers generated by chance. And that allows us basically to make a way around of opt-out. This is what you are mentioning. But we said it's very important to act sustainable. Despite the fact that we basically are allowed not to offer an opt-out and not offer the end customer to get out of the service, we have deployed an algorithm which allows that just because one single customer asked us in the whole history of our business in that area, one single customer contacted us and said, I would like not to participate in that kind of service, and we spent a lot of time and investments in order to filter out one single person out of the whole services, and that is basically our understanding of sustainability in that area. As well as I mentioned, we are trying actually also to place in the future. You have to understand that we don't have all the functionality straight away. You have to do investments as well. Is basically placing algorithms and programs where the end customers can choose the services by themselves and basically decline or accept a specific service.
Very last question, please.
I'm working for a tourist board, and as a tourist board, the main figures you have are how many nations per month were sleeping in your destination. But I'm working for Somat, so we also have a lot of day visitors. Can you tell me, for example, how many people from Mexico are today in Zermatt or have been in Zermatt in December?
Yeah, that is possible. We are also being able to distinguish also among the day visitors of Swiss visitors as well. This is more complex because Swiss people are basically all the time in the country. But that is possible because you basically analyze who was last week and the week after that day, specific day, not in that specific area, and that is the algorithm where you are able to calculate the Swiss day visitors as well as the ones from abroad. Like you said, from Mexico it's more easier because we are just calculating the number of visitors from Mexico in a specific day area and analyze if they have been here in the previous week or not.
Someone is begging here from
Yes, please, I'm very happy to tell you this.
This mic,
Yes, I think it's our institute who make the programs. We have developed some algorithms. We are able to count. We do that. We really did that for Freiburg. We make the difference using the Swisscom data between the excursionists and the people who spend the day. We develop some algorithms. This algorithm depends on the kind of destination, basically, which is the average length of stay. On this data, we are able to filter that out by countries. Thank you. It's the information that I would like.
It was also done for the Valley as well. So
Yes.
politically correct.
Yes, of course for Valley. Yes, of course.
And that data is basically, we are able to place that data in real time, in specific error factor, because the faster you do the calculation, the bigger is the error, but it depends on your use case what is acceptable. Typically you need approximately 2 weeks, no, 1 week. It's 1 week old information where we have placed very exact numbers, but the whole information is actually, we are able to provide the information every 2.5 minutes. So the system also works on the fly, where we are able to get all the mobile data out of the country and filter it and process that in the latest 2.5 minutes.
So now just one quick
No problem.
questions.
please, the very last one.
Thank
We have some
you.
housekeeping.
Okay, just wondering why you called it a revolution. So I'm just wondering if, I know Swisscom is very strong in Switzerland. I'm with them since I'm born. And I'm just wondering if it's a revolution, we as Switzerland will be slightly stronger than maybe another country because Swisscom is that strong. Might it be possible? Or will T-Online in Germany have the same power?
The competition will come rather from the United States and Asia. This is where our competitors are. Basically, the biggest competitors are the big ones like Google, Twitter, and Co. They are placing new services where they are able actually to replace complete telco infrastructure very fast, as well as startups. These are the ones which are competitors, and we do, from my perspective, too little in regards to that technology in Europe as a whole. Something needs to be done there, but I don't want to talk about the mentality and business environment in that area. It's a different topic. Why the European companies are not being that competitive in comparing to the Asian or United States.
But we will be strong in Switzerland.
That is my hope.
We might be stronger than Germany.
Okay, at the moment, in regards to that use cases, basically we have at the moment the most complex use cases being placed on the market worldwide. If you look at the United States, you have more use cases, but they are not that complex. Okay?
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Victor, for the excellent presentation. Thank you for the audience for the very interesting questions as well. And now we will move to the next keynote speaker. Our next keynote speaker is Ms. Dr. Kelly McGuire. Dr. Kelly McGuire leads the Hospitality and Travel Global Practice for SAS, not to confuse with SAS. Dr. McGuire works with product management, sales, alliances, and research and development to ensure that SAS solutions meet the needs of the market. Before joining SAS, McGuire consulted with Harris Entertainment on restaurant revenue management strategies for their major markets. Dr. McGuire has a BS from Georgetown University and an MMH and a PhD in revenue management from the Cornell School of Hotel Administration. Her research has been published in the Cornell Hospitality Quarterly Journal, and the Journal of Hospitality and Tourism Research, and the Journal of Service Management. She is also a frequent contributor to industry publications, speaker at industry conference, and she is co-author of the SAS CHR blog, The Analytic Hospitality Executive. Kelly, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm so happy to be here. So for those of you who are not familiar with SAS, we're the largest privately held software company in the world, and we specialize in advanced analytics solutions, covering all kinds of industries. My specialty is in hospitality and travel, so I have the good fortune to work with all of our hospitality and travel customers around the world, and we work with most of the major players. But I'm here today to talk to you about a research stream that I've been working on with my colleague, Dr. Breffney Noon from Penn State in the US. Breffney and I met during a PhD program at Cornell. And we're both revenue managers by training, but we became very interested in our work at Cornell and in the time since then in the intersection between revenue management, which is a very scientific, pricing, analytic discipline, and consumer behavior. Because in today's marketplace, especially for revenue management in the hotel industry, things are evolving quite rapidly. When the OTAs came on the scene 15 or 20 years ago, that ushered in this environment of price transparency and put a lot more power in the hands of the consumer to understand market dynamics and use some different information to make a hotel purchase. And so as we watched these dynamics, we realized that what was happening is the hotel revenue manager was very focused on understanding demand patterns so that they could make the right pricing strategies. And they were using not only their price, but the competitor price and the interaction between those to understand demand patterns, working really hard to try to put the best price out in the market to drive revenue and bookings for the hotel. Now the consumer, on the other hand, was also looking at that hotel's price and the price of the competitive set, but they were using that information, or they do use that information to assess value. And if a hotelier misses that crucial piece of information, how the consumer assesses value and how they value your product or service relative to the competition, then you're going to miss a big piece of the equation when you're trying to develop profitable pricing and positioning strategies for a hotel. So it was this question that started to interest us, because what we realized is that in today's complex online travel market, the consumers have a lot more information at the point of purchase than they ever have before. So they can see your price, they can see all the prices of similar hotels in the market, but there's other non-price information at the point of purchase that consumers can use while they're making decisions, in the form of all that user-generated content, like reviews, the sort of unstructured text descriptions of an experience, ratings, which are more quantitative. There's things like TripAdvisor, ranks on those review sites, branding information. So in order to truly assess how a consumer is assessing value, it's important to understand how they use all of that non-price information with price to make a purchase decision. So that's the question that we set out to answer in the series of research studies that I'm going to show you. So to get at this, right, we're wanting to know how they're really trading off among these different pieces of information, how they're assessing value based on those pieces of information. So we used a methodology called discrete choice analysis, basically choice modeling. Now the advantage you have with choice modeling is you basically present your participants with a set of options, and they all vary on different attribute levels that you want to study, and you ask the participant to identify their preferred choice. And they do this exercise repeatedly. So you can track statistically the pattern of choice and understand how they're using all of those attributes and the different levels of those attributes to determine value and ultimately make a decision. So it's a very useful technique for us to really understand in this sort of massive information at the point of purchase how consumers were assessing value and ultimately making a choice. So for our first study, we set up a typical online purchase of a leisure stay. So we told study participants they were going to spend the weekend in a major US city center, and we recruited participants that had traveled at least once for leisure in the last year and had made the booking online themselves. So this was a sort of a relevant sample. This was, we recruited an online panel of folks from the US that was a representative sample of the US population. And then we showed them a scenario where they were supposed to pick between 3 different hotels. And this is what the scenario looked like. So we told them that all hotels were equally convenient location. They were the same class of service, so they were all 4-star hotels with similar amenities. So the items in blue, those were held constant. And then we varied the other sets of attributes. So we were going to show them for each hotel a set of reviews that varied on 3 attribute levels. The first was sentiment, so whether the review was positive or negative. The second attribute, content of the review. So was the review about the service or was it about the room? And then the third attribute was the language of the review. So a review might say, I loved the bed. Another review might say, the bed was very comfortable. So that both reviews, positive, both reviews about the room. First review, I loved the bed, that's that emotional language. The second review, the bed was very comfortable, that's descriptive. So that was the language, how we operationalize language. We also showed them an aggregate rating. That's the sort of 1 to 5 average of all the reviewers' sort of overall score. And that was either a low, medium, or high rating. We showed them TripAdvisor rank. So that is in a market, what position are you out of all of the hotels in the market? And that was also low, medium, or high. Then the hotel was either from an unknown brand or a known brand. And then finally, we varied the price of the hotel. It could have been either low, medium, or high. So our participants were shown a set of 3 hotels, all with varying combinations of these attributes. We asked them to pick which of the hotels they would book, and they did that exercise 3 times, okay? And then we asked them to tell us what they were thinking while they were making the choice between the hotels that they looked at. All right, so that was the methodology. Everyone's with me? I know, I love presenting to researchers because you guys are on it like right away. Sometimes the hoteliers take a few minutes. Okay. I hope there's no hoteliers in here, but it probably doesn't count for you. Okay, so let's look at who these leisure travelers were before we talk about how they chose. As I mentioned, this was a U.S. population. We can talk about how this extends outside of the U.S. About even gender split, about 50 years old. The majority of them took between 1 to 5 trips per year. 65% of them said they book online the majority of the time, so they are users of those online sources of booking. And the majority of them said that they read or were influenced by reviews the majority of the time. Now, I want you to keep these numbers in mind. They're going to show up later, okay? 55% read and are influenced by reviews. Okay, so output of choice model. First thing we want to assess is which attributes were influential or significant influencers of choice behavior, and how influential those attributes were. So you remember my attribute list that I just showed you? So for our leisure travelers, this in order were the drivers of choice behavior for these consumers. Review sentiment, number 1. Okay? Price, second, then rating, TripAdvisor rank, and brand. So, very interesting. Consumers appear to be paying close attention to those reviews. Once you sort of assess the attributes that drive choice, the next step is to look at a more detailed level of these attributes and see how the attribute levels are influencing consumer value perceptions. So I'm going to show you a chart now. We do have a lot of researchers in the room, but it is early. So I'm going to make it easier for you. I'll do a data interpretive dance up here so we don't have to think too hard, right? What I want you to pay attention to on the chart is not the numbers or the values themselves, but the magnitude and direction of the bars that I'm going to show you, okay? So here comes the interpretive dance. Okay, here are all of the value assessments by attribute level from my study participants. The top bar represents the negative impact of the negative reviews on value perception. So you can see, red bar means negative, quite a significant impact of a negative review on value. And we would expect that. It was the most influential variable on choice behavior. So we would expect that to be quite a large effect. The next two variables represent the negative impact on value as we raise price. So the top bar is the negative impact on value when we go from the lowest price to our mid-range price. Pretty big effect. That next bar down represents the negative impact of going from that mid-range price to the high price on the consumer value perceptions. And you can see that that effect is larger. So our leisure travelers, not surprisingly, quite price sensitive. Quite price sensitive. Okay, here's where things get a little interesting. To me. Yes.
So
it's just when you say mid-range, because this looks rather like 235 to 295, so the last highest bit of it.
Yes.
So this different message, right? It's so 235, but it's not necessarily mid-range, but it's
It was
already
mid-range from what I saw.
there.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I mean, we had to make sure that the prices were going to look realistic, so we did a survey of typical prices for a 4-star hotel in a city center in the U.S., and that was the range and standard deviation that we found. And so, yes, that price is getting quite high, which is pretty typical for a 4-star property. And you see that our consumers are reacting to that, our leisure travelers are reacting to that. Okay, good, thank you for that. Okay, so ratings. Now remember we said that ratings were the third most influential variable on on choice behavior and value perceptions. But here's what happened with ratings. This teeny little red bar is not significant. Consumers did not notice the difference in value between a hotel that was terrible, right, low rating, and a hotel that was just okay. No value associated with that at all. Didn't notice it. It was only the comparison between a hotel that was great, right, the highest possible rating, over a hotel that was just okay. That's when consumers saw a little bit more value associated with that hotel. So unless you were great, consumers didn't notice. Same held for the TripAdvisor rank. It was only the comparison between the top of the market hotel and the one sort of average, where you got any value associated with that hotel on that attribute level. So had to be top of the top for consumers to notice and value that. And then finally, brand was our last significant driver of choice, and we saw a slight increase in value associated with a known brand. Small effect, but definitely significant. Sadly, because the hypotheses for this first study were around language and content, neither of those were significant. But interestingly, right, so as far as these consumers were concerned, it was just the sentiment of the review that mattered. Didn't matter what the review said or how the reviewers spoke about their experience. Okay, so with this information, we're starting to see these value perceptions and how these attributes influence value perceptions. We can use these value perceptions to understand the impact of these attributes and attribute levels on the overall value consumers associate with a hotel option. So again, I'm going to show you now some equations. We're early in the day, it's just addition. But what I want you to pay attention to is not the sum of the equation itself, but how that value changes as we change attribute levels. Okay, so we can start to see how these attributes are impacting consumers' overall value perceptions. So here we go. So for our leisure travelers, what I want to show you first is their ideal hotel, the hotel that has the highest value to these leisure consumers. Not surprisingly, this is going to be a hotel with positive reviews, the lowest possible price, the highest possible rating, a high TripAdvisor rank, and a known brand. And that is our anchor for their highest possible value associated with that hotel. So now that I know this, now that I know the highest possible value perception, I can start changing some of those attribute levels and see what the impact on value perception is. I can start looking at different combinations of these attributes. So the first thing I'm going to do is just raise the price. I'm going to take this hotel from the lowest price up to the highest price and see how that impacts value. Right? Everything else the same. We see a pretty significant, we go down almost 2/3 or 3/4, pretty significant impact on value perceptions once the price is raised. So even with all else at their preferred level, that price has a big influence on value, which we would expect for our leisure travelers that are spending their own money, highly price sensitive. Okay, but look what happens when I manipulate that review sentiment, which was again the most powerful influencer of choice. So I'm going to hold everything constant, and I'm just going to show what happens when the hotel has negative reviews. That hotel loses all value in the minds of the consumers. If the hotel has negative reviews, you're just out of the choice set, period. That's it. This consumer simply won't consider you. Pretty powerful, those negative reviews, right? So it doesn't matter how low you drop the price, it doesn't matter whether you're a known brand or not. Consumers simply see no value associated with a hotel with negative reviews. So, my takeaways from this first study. Obviously, reviews are critical. Have to pay attention to your reputation. And if you do happen to be in that position where you have negative reputation in the market, don't bother lowering the price, just fix the problem. You gotta fix the problem. Because consumers are not going to consider the hotel if it's negatively reviewed. But price is important to consumers as well. So all else being equal with reputation and reviews, our consumers are still looking for the lowest possible price. So you need to know your position both on price and reputation in the market. If you're going to try to play around with some aggressive pricing policies in the market. And finally, the ratings for your hotel are influential, but only when the hotel has a great rating as opposed to okay. So our leisure travelers, they're really looking for great. They're looking for great experiences, and if it's anything but great, they don't have any value perception associated with that. Okay, so that was my first study on leisure travelers. So pretty interesting results here about how powerful that user-generated content was. And as I went out speaking to the market about this research, the number one question that I was getting from hoteliers was, okay, that's the leisure traveler, that's great, but what about the business traveler? That's a pretty significant and valuable segment for us, and we would like to know how those business travelers use all this user-generated information as well. So we embarked on a second study. We used the same framework as the first study, But we instead recruited a panel of business travelers who travel at least 6 times a year and who have some control over where they stay. So not overly constrained by a corporate policy, can actually book or make a choice themselves. So very frequent business travelers, use the same representative sample of the US population. Similar to the first study, we told them the 3 hotels they would choose from were equally convenient and business-friendly hotels. So we held that constant. And we used the same set of attributes that we used in the first study, but we knew there was one thing when we were dealing with frequent business travelers that likely drove some choice behavior and that we needed to account for. And that was this. So this cartoon says, wait, I may have a card showing my loyalty to whatever store this is. We anticipated that business travelers are likely influenced by some sort of loyalty affiliation or loyalty membership, and we wanted to test how that affiliation influenced their reaction to some of these other attributes as well. So for this study, we asked our participants to identify a preferred hotel brand, and then we added that preferred brand to the hotel brand attribute. So we would then have 3 levels of that brand attribute. They would either see their preferred brand, a known but non-preferred brand, or an unknown brand. Everything else is the same as the first study. Okay? We collected a lot of information about their loyalty, affiliation, and behavior, just very interested to see where some of these influences were. So I'm going to show you some of that. This study was never designed to be a study about loyalty program membership and loyalty program behavior. So I'm not going to make inferences about that, but it is interesting to see how our participants fell out when it came to loyalty. So let's talk about that a little bit. Okay. Our participants or business travelers held about over 2 cards, 2 loyalty program memberships at least on average. And about 45% of them belong to a non-brand loyalty program. So this would mean something like the OTAs, Expedia, Hotels.com have a loyalty program, or some of the affiliations, loyalty programs like Leading Hotels of the World, Preferred Hotels. So almost half of them belong to one of those as well. And then my blue chart there, those were the loyalty programs that we tested in this study. So not an exhaustive list of loyalty programs, but it gives you a flavor. We picked loyalty programs that had hotels, that sort of business class hotels that fit the scenario. And we asked our participants to identify which of these loyalty programs they belong to. So the green represents the percent of the participants that held a card from that loyalty program. And then the orange column represents the percent of participants that identified one of the brands within that loyalty program as their preferred brand. So for example, for Hilton, we offered Hilton, DoubleTree, Embassy Suites, and 34% of our participants picked one of those brands as the preferred brand that they were then shown in the study. Okay? About 8% of participants said they didn't belong to any loyalty programs. And then we assessed some of their loyalty behavior. So we asked them how loyal they felt, so their sort of loyalty affinity to the brand, and that came out on average across all of our participants at about a 5 out of 7, which is not terribly loyal feeling overall. And that was borne out a little bit by their loyalty behavior, or how loyal they acted. So the majority of our participants stayed with their preferred brand about 25 to 74% of the time. Only 4% stayed with their preferred brand 100% of the time in the last 12 months. So between the multiple programs that these folks belong to, the mediocre feelings of loyalty, and the not very loyal stay behavior, it's an interesting comment. Again, it's not an inference, but it's sort of a comment on business traveler behavior. somehow 3% were not able to stay with your preferred brand in the last 12 months. I don't know what that means, but... Okay, so this was sort of the loyalty for our business travel participants. Here's the demographic profile. So primarily male, a little younger than our leisure traveler study. About half of them travel between 6 to 10 trips per year, and 93% stay 2+ nights per trip. So these are definitely frequent travelers. And they are definitely travelers that are getting up into those tiers of loyalty programs where you start to earn points and status. But I want you to look at this. Remember I told you remember that number before? 80% of these business travelers said that they read reviews and are influenced by those reviews. 55% of leisure travelers said that. I have to tell you, I was quite surprised by this number. I didn't think that business travelers would really be that into reading reviews, assuming they travel all the time, they know the brands, they have to be someplace. But these folks are reading reviews with much more frequency than our leisure travelers. And in fact, as we started to get into the choice modeling results, we started to see the influence of that statistic. So let me show you first overall attribute importance. So like we did with the business travelers, we assessed the drivers of choice, and here we see review sentiment, so positive, negative, on top again, followed by brand, then rating, then price, and then review language. So we're starting to see some differences, I'll remind you of our leisure traveler results already, with how these business travelers are choosing hotels. So I'm going to show you the same chart with the attribute levels so we can dig in a little bit as to how the mechanisms underlying these choice influencers. So it's the same format as before. We're going to look at the magnitude and direction of the value impact of these attribute levels. Okay, so top bar represents our most significant driver of choice, those the review sentiment. And here we see the negative impact of a negative review. Again, pretty significant, we would expect, since was the #1 driver of choice. The two blue bars underneath here represent the value associated with brand. So this bar here is a slight perception of value associated with the known brand over an unknown brand. So similar to the first study, and this bar, this really big bar, is that increase in value associated with the preferred brand as compared to a known brand. So that preferred brand is definitely driving choice behavior for these frequent business travelers. Here's where it starts to get really interesting. Okay, good, you're with me. These are the two bars that represent the value associated with increasing ratings of the hotel. The top bar is the increase in value associated with the okay over terrible. The bottom bar with great over okay. Now what do you notice here? The top bar is bigger than the bottom bar. So our business travelers actually care more that the hotel is okay instead of terrible than that the hotel is great instead of okay. Now, they still care if the hotel is great. That's a decent size impact there. But okay has more impact on value perceptions than great. And here we get into that weird price significant attribute. So the next two bars represent price. This bar here is the negative impact on value of raising the price from the lowest possible price to a mid-range price. And that is significant. So those business travelers see a decrease in value when the price goes up to that mid-range. But once the price is at the mid-range, this attribute level is not significant. So once the price gets up past that lowest possible price, business travelers don't care anymore. They don't see any difference between the mid-range price, the high price, so they start to become not price sensitive there. But they do notice that low price. Not something we would have expected, right? And then finally, the review language. So we see a slight preference here, a slight value associated with the descriptive reviews over the emotional reviews. So here we see, kind of consistent with that 80% metric, that the business travelers are really paying attention to those reviews, and they're using them to assess what that state experience is going to be like at a very detailed level. So they want to see a description as opposed to just somebody either gushing or bitching about their experience. TripAdvisor rank, not significant. Content of the review, not significant. So again, some very different behavior here. So like we did with the leisure traveler, let's take a look at how these value perceptions of the attribute levels impact the overall value of a hotel, a combination of these attributes for a hotel option. So I'm going to do the same thing we did with the leisure traveler, show you a series of equations, and we're going to pay attention to the changes in that value. Okay, so for the business traveler, in order of attribute importance, their ideal choice, positive reviewed hotel with their preferred brand. They want the highest possible rating, lowest possible price, with descriptive reviews. That's the value baseline that we're going to work off of, right? So again, more important how that's going to change. So like with the leisure traveler, let's raise the price of this hotel. So here we see a slight decrease in value, because remember, they liked that low price, but not very much once we raised the price. So after the low price, they weren't that price sensitive, so we're not seeing a huge impact on value with that high price, okay?
Don't you think that's because the company's paying?
Yeah, that's exactly right. But what was interesting there, though, is they did notice the deal, even though the company was paying. Maybe some very altruistic business travelers, I guess, helping out the company. I don't know. Okay, so let's look at now and remember, price is also only the fourth most influential variable. So let's look at the most influential variable. When holding everything else constant, the reviews go negative. This is what happens. Now, we do see a significant decrease in value here, about half, but it's not zero. So unlike our leisure travelers, these business travelers are looking at some of these other attributes and valuing them enough that those negative reviews are not going to necessarily remove a hotel from the choice site. Okay, for our second most influential attribute, we'll hold everything else constant and go to that unknown brand. Now here we see, again, a pretty significant drop in value, not as much as with the negative reviews, but certainly a drop in value. So that preferred brand is pretty powerful in terms of value perceptions, as are the ratings. So remember, we saw that big impact of the hotel that was okay over terrible, and then still a relatively large impact of a hotel that was great over okay. These effects, though, are pretty equivalent. So interestingly, the ratings impact nearly as powerful as the brand impact of these hotels. So when I've spoken to hoteliers about these results with business travelers, there's been some interesting interpretations, and one that I'll share. I was working with a woman who considered herself to be probably an unknown brand in the US market. So they were a small chain, less than 20 hotels in major markets in the US, frequently competing against hotels with those robust, powerful loyalty programs. And what she said to me was, when she looked at this result, right, compared to this result and some of the other ones, she realized that she actually had a chance against some of these big brands if they had sort of negative UGC in the marketplace. That she might be able to entice some business travelers, particularly if she had the opportunity to play around with price a little bit, so give them a little bit of a deal, entice them to try her brand, and maybe build some brand advocates out of those business travelers. So it's interesting news for hoteliers to interpret how these business travelers behave versus how the leisure travelers behave. So let's review from the business traveler perspective. Reviews matter to the business traveler, and they matter because the business traveler wants to know what their experience is going to be like. So it's not just the sentiment of the reviews, but they're going to read the reviews and they want to see descriptive reviews. They want to know if it's going to be okay. But they will put up with okay, as long as they can get those loyalty points. So the loyalty affiliation matters to business travelers as well. So it doesn't have to be great for these guys. It has to be good enough so that they can get those loyalty points and perks. And interestingly, price matters. So what we see from this hotel, or from this study, is that even if you're not spending your own money, business travelers still recognize a deal, and they respond to it. So there's something about human nature that really just responds to a low price, whether it's your money or not. Provides an opportunity for hoteliers to play around with price a little bit in this segment and maybe attract some additional demand, where we may not have expected we could do that. Now really quickly, we did a secondary analysis after this, and you all are going to be the first audience that I show this to, so I'm very interested in some of your reactions to what you're going to see next. But as I'm out in the market speaking to loyalty program managers, particularly in the hotel space, but elsewhere as well, there's a lot of concern about creating a loyalty program that causes the consumers to become loyal to the program and not to the brand. And we see this happening with the major US airline carriers, where if you ask their top-tier customers how they feel about US Air, Delta, they will tell you that they hate the company, but they fly with them all the time because of their loyalty points and their status and their first-class upgrades. I'm one of those travelers. Trust me, the US airlines have a long way to go on service. But I'm stuck! Anyway, so because research would tell us that loyalty to the brand is what creates all those outcomes that we strive for, things like likelihood to recommend, repeat visits, engagement. So we wanted to know, does loyalty to the brand also change your behavior on some of these metrics from a previous study? So we did a follow-up analysis where we split out that attitudinal loyalty measure into 3 groups, sort of so that we could get equivalent size. Everybody who scored under 5 in that attitudinal loyalty, we call them our average loyalty people, so not super excited about the brand. We had a high loyalty group between 5 and 6 out of 7, and then our raving fans. And sure enough, there were differences in how these business travelers responded to price and reputation based on their attitudinal loyalty. Basically, those average loyal people, the ones that were lower in that attitudinal loyalty, they were much more price sensitive and much more reputation sensitive than the other 2 groups. So, particularly on reputation, when you got into the high loyalty and raving fans, these folks were much more forgiving to those negative reviews and the low ratings for the negative reviews in particular for the hotels. So once you've gained that affinity, you can sort of not worry about your reputation as much with these folks. And then, so the average loyalty were the most price sensitive. High loyalty were sort of the least price sensitive. Interestingly, those raving fans, they responded most to that deal. So they liked to see the deal, they were more sensitive to the deal, but then once you got the lowest price in the market, but once you got up to above that low price, they were the least price sensitive of all. So for some reason, they had the most reaction to the low price, but cared the least once we were above that. I'm still working on that one. We ran this analysis about a month ago, we're still trying to figure that one out. But anyway, point being here, that it behooves the brands to create loyalty programs that foster attitudinal loyalty to the brand itself. Because then your guests will be willing to pay more and forgive you a little bit on some negative reviews for your hotel because they feel that affinity towards the brand. Okay, so with this research stream that I presented, netting it out, and these are the results sort of summarized. The job of the hotelier in today's social world is not getting any easier. So we see significant differences based on the traveler segment. We see significant influence of reputation on consumer buying behavior. We see also price effects. So a hotelier needs to be on top of not only their business mix, their reputation as compared to the market is critical, and then also paying attention to their price relative to the market, also critical. So a much more complex decision to really get those pricing and positioning strategies right. So that's me. If you want more information about those studies, it's on my blog. And at Big Red Kelly, you can tell the Twitter sphere how awesome you thought my presentation was right there. And I welcome your questions. I know we're running up on time, but...
This is fine, Kelly. Thanks so much for the excellent presentation. If I may, I would like to challenge you a little bit.
Sure.
Let's think about a business traveler, heavy business traveler with a family. So he's a leisure traveler as well. How would this person actually act?
They're gonna act very differently when they're booking for themselves and with their family. And that's the point, I think, that came out of that, that came out so clearly to me out of the business traveler study. During the week, the business traveler is collecting points for the free trip they're going to take the family on twice a year. And so the business traveler, again, is just saying, look, I have to stay with Hilton, I have to stay with Marriott, so we can go to Hawaii for the family vacation for free. So as long as it's not gross and terrible, then I'll stay there. But when I try to figure out which of the Marriott resorts, or which resort I'm going to stay in Hawaii, you better believe it should be great. Because I've been working hard and staying in terrible hotels all year for this. That's my assessment of that.
So, I mean, this of course a policy issue as well. We have now in Europe with the crisis, you have many companies not allowing their employees to use their points privately, points or miles or whatever. So that may change a little bit. Is it the case in the United States? You think there is a huge difference between Europe and the United States in that case?
You know, I don't know, that's terrible. Remind me not to come work over here until that changes. I suspect that there are some differences, but I think that, and I'd be eager to speak with all of you about your experiences here. I suspect that behaviorally some of this, though, would still be the case. An experienced business traveler is going to be both more critical and also more understanding than a relatively less experienced leisure traveler. Now, an experienced business traveler traveling for leisure, probably is behaving somewhere in between. But that's why I think we see such a high percentage of them that read reviews. But interestingly, when we asked the business traveler to describe what they were thinking while they were making choices, they were more cynical about reviews than the leisure travelers were. So the business travelers would say things like, I take these reviews with a grain of salt. I know some people are just negative. Whereas the leisure travelers would say things like, these reviews are like friends. So I suspect that it's experience with travel that are probably driving some of these results, as well as travel purpose, right?
What about the 88% of business travelers trusting the reviews? I mean, this is huge compared to the leisure.
I didn't ask if they trusted, I asked if they read it.
Yeah.
Right, which is an important point.
Don't you think that has a correlation with the time business travelers spending on airports, rail stations, even in the office maybe, maybe having time to check the reviews compared, to private or leisure travelers, family members who may not have this time about reviews.
That could be a reason why so many more business travelers do read reviews than leisure travelers. The experience thing could be one of it. Business travelers have to be somewhere, they may not be there for as long. They're going to read a set of reviews to say, is this going to be okay? Am I going to get killed? Or is everything going to be fine? Versus a leisure traveler who may be looking at other aspects. Right?
So let's open the floor for questions from the audience, please.
Well, I saw your hand first. Do my own.
Thanks for your speech. I was wondering if in your study you were considering in your choice modeling the extent to which the negative review were currently present together with positive review, because we know that it's not just, you cannot assume that comments review are totally negative or positive, and the proportion between the two seems to affect the credibility of user-generated content. So I was wondering if you were framing this.
Thank you.
Yep, good question. We told our participants that they were seeing the most recent reviews, but in this study they were one-dimensional, either all negative or all positive. However, it was possible for a participant to see a hotel that had all negative reviews with a high rating, or all positive reviews with a low rating. So there was a little bit of disconnect there as well. I have seen the research that says that the degree to which the reviews are mixed influences choice behavior as well. Wasn't necessarily the effect we were trying to pick up in this study, but it's a good point.
Thank you, great stuff. You didn't say anything about external validity of your experiment, but anyway, I really appreciate the question would be, you have a message to hoteliers which is about prices. And that's why I was a bit surprised that you would be rather dismissive in terms of saying generosity or what you say, or you said they are just, it's just human to look at prices. But I would say it's about compliance with travel policy. Right? So you have these business travelers. They are under some travel policy of the company, and then there are some compliance rules, and so they will look at prices for this. So I would be interested in what you meant when you said right at the beginning that these are business travelers who have some discretion of decision.
Yeah, so I have two responses to that. There are some corporate travelers that have to stay with one brand or one type of hotel based on a travel policy. Set those aside because they didn't have any choice. However, we did say to the business travelers, assume that these hotel choices do conform with your corporate travel policy, because we knew that may make a difference. So they would assume in there that they could have booked a hotel at any of those prices, and they were still tending towards the lower price. Now, to your point, you could have business travelers in this set that are entrepreneurs that work for themselves, or really, it could just be that human nature dictates that we are altruistic towards our company, trying to keep costs down. But whatever it was, hotels need to understand that business travelers are going to respond to that low price. Whereas we may have assumed in the past that they were completely not price sensitive.
Last question, please. We're running out of time.
Thank you for your very interesting presentation. At the beginning, if I remember correctly, you said that 45% of the sample do not care about reviews. Do you have any idea or any answers how those who do not read reviews create the value or in the decision-making process? Which factors count for them?
No, because we were strictly, all of the choices that we gave had reviews in them. And so what that question was how often do you read reviews when you're researching a hotel? And it was all the time versus never. So half of them said they read reviews most of the time. So interpreting that, you could say that a lot of leisure travelers are not reading reviews. And in fact, I've seen some studies since then that say that if you, and this is an important point for people who are considering putting reviews on their own branded sites, whether it's a destination or a hotel, these leisure travelers, a lot of them don't read reviews, but when the reviews are right in front of them, they do. And so there may be a risk associated with making those reviews so visible to a leisure traveler, weighing against the benefits that we've seen associated with openness and engagement, etc. So,
Thanks so much. So big applause, please, for our speakers today. Thank you very much for the very good questions from the audience. And if I learned something today, is that Swisscom knew that I was walking this morning to the venue, and that probably I chose my hotel because of the reviews on the internet. Thank you very much.
Wow.
Hello. Just a bit of logistics. So now we are, as you know, in the Yellow Magna Hall, and we are having a coffee break over there in the hall. But then outside, okay? Just there. But then at 11:15, we'll try to start in different sections, or if you want to remain in this room, you remain for the Swiss eTourism Day, okay? So then, when the sessions from 11:50 to 12:15 finish, you move to the main building, to the auditorium for the keynote speech. And there we continue for a lunch as well, and then for the panel discussion, okay? So just don't get lost, please. Thank you.
Thank you, McGuire. Just another piece of information, you can exit that door. So the coffee break is also there. And it will be easier to get coffee from there than from there. So I'm suggesting you go that way. Second information, at 1 o'clock and at 2 o'clock, all the Swiss alarms will ring. We do it every year, once a year, to check that the Swiss alarming system works. So don't get preoccupied, there is no war, it's just a national check of all the alarming systems. Okay, please.
Come va?
Sono arrivati un po' tardi, ma...
Quando?
No, beh, sono arrivato circa mezz'ora fa.
Penso anche...
Ciao!
Si muore dal freddo qua dentro, andiamo a scappare.
Ho detto che meglio... Vabbè, non vince la fila e poi...
Ich kenne mich, ich habe schon oft mein Auto gesucht.